I'm about to show my family a bank account with $90 million in it. But first, I need to watch them refuse me $200. I know how this sounds. Insane, right? But hear me out, because what happened at that Thanksgiving dinner table changed everything. I'd been sitting on a lottery win for 3 weeks, $90 million burning a hole in my pocket, and I hadn't told a soul. Not my brother Kevin with his fake Rolex and his leased Mercedes. Not my mother Joyce with her country club memberships she couldn't actually afford. Nobody. Because I needed to know something first. I needed to know if the people who were supposed to love me would help me when I had nothing. So I put on my rattiest clothes, the jacket with holes in the elbows, the jeans I'd worn to clean houses, and I went to their Thanksgiving dinner. And I begged, "Mom, Kevin, I need help." My voice cracked perfectly. I'd practiced that part. "My landlord raised the rent. I'm $200 short, just $200. I'll pay you back next month, I swear." The silence that followed was delicious and devastating all at once. Tiffany, my brother's wife, was the first to break it. She threw her head back and laughed, this ugly, braying sound that made the crystal chandelier above us seem to shudder. "Oh my God," she wheezed, actually wiping tears from her eyes. "You want us to fund your little poverty lifestyle? That's rich, Sophia. That's really rich." Kevin didn't even look up from his plate, just kept cutting his $70 steak and said, cold as ice, "I have money to invest, Sophia, not to throw in the trash." But it was my mother who delivered the killing blow. Joyce set down her wine, expensive wine she'd probably put on a credit card she couldn't pay off, and looked at me with pure disgust. "You should have worked harder, like your brother, like successful people do." She paused, letting it sink in, letting everyone at that table see me squirm. "Get out of my table. You're embarrassing this family." Something inside me went very, very still. I stood up slowly, chair scraping, and walked out into the November rain without a word. I could hear Tiffany's laughter following me all the way to the door. I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, rain hammering the roof, hands shaking. And then I pulled out my phone, the new iPhone I'd kept hidden in its box, still using my cracked screen around them so they wouldn't ask questions. I opened my banking app. $450,000. The number glowed on the screen like a weapon. 3 weeks ago, I'd bought a lottery ticket at a random gas station. Every single number hit. I'd claimed it through lawyers, set up anonymous LLCs, and I'd been sitting on it like a coiled snake, waiting for this exact moment, testing them, and they'd failed so spectacularly it almost made me laugh. I typed a message to my attorney, the one who cost $5,000 an hour and was worth every penny. Test failed. They chose cruelty over kindness. Buy the debt. All of it. Because here's what my perfect brother and my disappointed mother didn't know. Their whole lives were built on borrowed money and borrowed time. Kevin's house, 3 months behind on the mortgage. His business, bleeding cash, desperate for investors. My mother's lifestyle, credit cards maxed to the limit. And I'd spent 3 weeks quietly buying it all. Every debt, every note, every single thing they thought they owned. I didn't just win the lottery. I'd been building a financial empire in the shadows, and now I owned their entire world. They just didn't know it yet. I looked back at Kevin's house through my rain-streaked windshield, all warm and glowing, full of people who thought they were better than me, and I smiled. Not a happy smile. A cold one. "The eviction starts tomorrow," I whispered to myself. "And by the time I'm done, they're going to wish they'd given me that $200. Because I wasn't just going to take their houses and their cars and their fake little empire. I was going to make them beg me for help, just like I begged them. And when they did, oh God, when they did, that's when the real revenge would begin. But first, I had to let them think they were winning. I had to watch them dig their own graves, one shovel of arrogance at a time. And trust me, they were about to dig deep. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been standing in a gas station at 11 p.m., buying a lottery ticket I didn't even want. I was exhausted. I'd just finished cleaning a house for $50. My back hurt, and I grabbed the ticket because the guy in front of me was taking forever and I was bored. That ticket cost $2. $2 that would change everything. When I checked the numbers the next morning, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there on my apartment floor, staring at my phone, watching the news confirm what I already knew. Someone in my city had won $90 million. That someone was me. And in that moment, I made a decision that probably saved my life. I told absolutely no one. Instead, I called a law firm. Not just any law firm, the kind that represents billionaires and corporations and people who need to disappear money legally. I sat in their mahogany office and wearing my cleaning clothes, and I said, I need to claim this anonymously, and I need to build something that can't be traced back to me. They nodded like I'd just ordered coffee. Within 48 hours, I had an LLC called Nemesis Holdings. Yeah, I named it that on purpose. And a team of financial advisors who specialized in making people invisible. The Lottery Commission cut a check to Nemesis Holdings. Sophia Martinez, the broke house cleaner, she stayed broke. On paper, at least. But here's where it gets interesting. While I was sitting on that money, I started doing research. Real research. I hired a private investigator. Cost me 10 grand, but worth every penny. And I had him dig into my family's finances. What he found made my blood boil and my heart sing at the same time. Kevin's successful business. It was hemorrhaging money. He'd taken out loans he couldn't repay, maxed out business credit cards, and was one bad quarter away from bankruptcy. His house, the one with the marble countertops and the stupid fountain. He'd refinanced it twice and was 3 months behind on payments. The bank was about to foreclose. My mother, Joyce, she was drowning in credit card debt, keeping up appearances at the country club with money she didn't have. I sat in my tiny apartment, looking at these reports, and I realized something beautiful. They were broke. All of them. The only difference between me and them was that I admitted I was struggling, and they lied about it. They'd built their entire lives on a foundation of debt and appearances, and it was all about to come crashing down. And that's when I had the idea. What if I could buy their debt? What if I could become the person they owed money to, without them ever knowing it was me? My attorney loved it. It's aggressive, he said, grinning like a shark, but it's legal. So we went shopping. First, I bought Kevin's mortgage note from the bank. They were happy to sell. They just wanted the debt off their books. Cost me $800,000 cash, which sounds like a lot until you remember I had 90 million. Suddenly, I owned my brother's house. He still lived there, still thought he was making payments to Bank of America, but every dollar he sent, it came to me. Then I bought his business debt. Then I started quietly buying up shares in the companies he needed as clients, the ones keeping his business afloat. Within 2 weeks, I didn't just have power over Kevin. I had total control. But I didn't stop there. I had my team create a fake investment firm, a real company, legitimate on paper, but owned entirely by me through layers of corporate structure so thick, you'd need a mining crew to dig through it. We called it Seraphim Capital. Website, office space in a luxury building downtown, the works. And we started putting out feelers that we were looking to invest in, promising small businesses in need of capital. Kevin's company fit the profile perfectly. I knew he'd come crawling eventually. All I had to do was wait. And while I waited, I went to that Thanksgiving dinner. I put on my poorest clothes and I begged for $200, just to see what they'd do. Now, sitting in my car outside their house, watching the rain, I knew exactly what they'd do. They'd laugh, they'd mock, they'd throw me out like garbage, and that's exactly why tomorrow morning, my attorney would file the foreclosure notice on Kevin's house. That's why Seraphim Capital would schedule a promising meeting with Kevin about investing millions in his dying business. That's why I was about to become the puppet master of their entire lives. They thought I was the failure. But I was about to teach them that the biggest failures aren't the people who fall down. They're the people who kick others when they're down. And lessons like that? They cost a lot more than $200. 4 days after Thanksgiving, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number at first, but then I saw the area code and I knew. It was Tiffany. My finger hovered over the decline button for a solid 10 seconds. I wanted to watch it ring, wanted to imagine her on the other end getting more and more frustrated. But then curiosity won. I answered, "Hello?" I made my voice small, defeated, exactly how she'd expect me to sound. And oh God, what came next was even better than I'd imagined. "Sophia, hi, it's Tiffany." Her voice was fake sweet, like artificial sweetener that leaves a bitter aftertaste. "Look, I know Thanksgiving was, well, You know. But listen, we're in a bit of a bind and I thought of you. A bind. She thought of me. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, my heart starting to race with anticipation. Kevin's company is doing amazing, like investors are fighting to meet with him, so we're throwing this huge party. Really high-end, you know? But our catering company just canceled last minute. Some stupid excuse about payment issues. Payment issues. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing because I knew exactly what those payment issues were. I'd bought that catering company's receivables 2 days ago and instructed them to drop any clients who were behind on bills. Anyway, Tiffany continued, we need someone to serve drinks, pass appetizers, clean up, basic stuff. We'll pay you $50 for the whole night. Cash, what do you say? $50 to serve at a party that was costing them thousands. To be their maid while Kevin schmoozed investors who were supposed to save his sinking ship. The disrespect was so bold it was almost impressive. I should have been insulted. I should have hung up. But instead, I felt this warm, electric thrill run through my entire body. Because this was perfect. This was better than anything I could have planned. Okay, I said, letting my voice crack a little, like I was swallowing my pride. I need the money. I'll do it. I could practically hear Tiffany's smile through the phone. Great. Saturday night, 6 p.m. sharp. Wear black and white. Something that looks professional, like server clothes. You know what I mean? I knew exactly what she meant. She wanted me to look poor, to look like the help, to be a visible reminder to everyone at that party that she and Kevin had made it, while I was still scrubbing toilets and serving drinks. I'll be there, I said softly. We hung up, and I sat there in my apartment, well, one of my apartments, the shabby one I kept for appearances, and I smiled at the ceiling. See, here's what Tiffany didn't understand. I didn't need $50. I could have bought her entire life with the loose change in my investment account. But what she was offering me was worth so much more than money. She was inviting me into the inner sanctum. She was going to let me watch Kevin pitch to investors. Let me see exactly how desperate he really was. Let me hear every lie he told and every promise he couldn't keep. I called my attorney. They invited me to serve at their investor party, I said, and I could hear him start laughing. You're kidding. I'm not. And I accepted. There was a pause, and then he said something that made me love him a little. You're absolutely diabolical. What do you need from me? I thought about it for a moment, looking out my window at the city lights, at all the people down there who had no idea that empires were rising and falling in the shadows. I need you to print out Kevin's foreclosure notice, the official one, and I need it to look accidental, like something that might fall out of a folder at a party. Saturday came faster than I expected. I showed up at Kevin's house at exactly 6 p.m., wearing a simple black dress and white apron I'd bought specifically for this. Tiffany answered the door, looked me up and down like I was a piece of furniture she was evaluating, and said, "You're late." I wasn't. My phone said 6 p.m. exactly, but I didn't argue. Sorry, I mumbled. She led me to the kitchen where she'd laid out trays and instructions, treating me like I was stupid, explaining how to hold a tray and offer drinks. The whole time, I kept thinking, I own your house. I own your husband's business. I own your future. But I just nodded and said, yes, ma'am. The guests started arriving around 7. Rich people, or people pretending to be rich, I'd learned there was a difference. Kevin worked the room in his expensive suit that I knew he'd bought on credit, shaking hands, laughing too loud, his desperation invisible to everyone except me. I moved through the crowd with champagne, and I listened. Oh God, I listened to everything. I heard Kevin tell one investor that his company had unprecedented growth potential. I heard him tell another that he had zero debt and strong cash flow. Every word was a lie. Every handshake was built on sand. And I was the only person in that room who knew the truth. I was invisible to them. Just the help. Just poor Sophia serving drinks. But I wasn't invisible. I was a ghost haunting their future. And that's when I saw him. Marcus Chen, one of the biggest angel investors in the city, a man who'd made fortunes finding struggling companies and turning them around. Kevin had been trying to get a meeting with him for months, and now here he was, at the party, glass of champagne in hand, looking bored. Kevin saw him too. I watched my brother's eyes light up. watched him excuse himself from whatever conversation he was in and make a beeline for Marcus. This was it. This was Kevin's Hail Mary, his last chance to save everything. And I was about to blow it up, because tucked in my apron pocket, folded carefully, was a document, the foreclosure notice for this house, the one that showed Kevin was 3 months behind and 30 days from eviction, and Marcus Chen was about to find it. But I had to make it look like an accident. I had to make it look like fate. I watched Kevin corner Marcus Chen near the fireplace, and I moved closer with my tray of champagne, invisible as always. Kevin was in full pitch mode, his voice loud and confident, hands gesturing like he was conducting an orchestra. Marcus, I've been hoping to connect with you. My company, KevTech Solutions, we're revolutionizing the B2B software space. Triple-digit growth, solid fundamentals, and we're looking for the right partner to scale to the next level. Marcus nodded politely, but I could see his eyes. He'd heard 1,000 pitches like this before. Kevin kept going. My personal finances are rock solid. House paid off, 0 debt, clean balance sheet. I don't need the money, I need the right strategic partner. That lie hung in the air like smoke, and I felt my jaw clench. He was standing in a house that was 30 days from foreclosure, wearing a watch he'd bought on credit, lying through his perfect white teeth. Marcus took a sip of champagne and asked the question that makes every desperate entrepreneur sweat. What's your current runway? Kevin didn't miss a beat. 18 months of cash, conservative estimate, we're profitable, just looking to accelerate growth. Another lie. I knew from the reports that Kevin had maybe 6 weeks before his business account hit 0. Maybe less. I moved around them, offering refills, and that's when I saw Tiffany across the room. She was watching me with this satisfied smirk, clearly loving the sight of me serving her guests, playing the role of the family failure. She caught my eye and mouthed, "More appetizers." I nodded obediently and headed toward the kitchen, but I didn't go straight there. I took the long way, circling back past Kevin and Marcus. I positioned myself just right, tray balanced on one hand, and I listened to Kevin laying it on thick. My sister, actually, the one serving drinks right now, I've been supporting her for years. Addiction issues, you know how it is. I believe in family, even when it costs me. My vision went red. Addiction issues. I'd never touched drugs in my life. Never had more than a glass of wine at dinner. But here he was, telling a potential investor that I was a charity case, a burden, using my fake poverty as proof of his generosity. Marcus glanced at me, and I saw pity flash across his face. Pity for Kevin, stuck with a mess of a sister. That was it. That was the moment I decided to destroy him right here, right now. I walked past them toward the hallway, deliberately bumping the edge of the side table, just enough to make my tray wobble. Papers scattered from a folder that someone had left there earlier. I'd placed it there myself, made it look like Kevin's messy paperwork. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," I gasped, setting down the tray and dropping to my knees to gather the papers. Marcus, being a decent human being, bent down to help me. "It's okay. Accidents happen," he said kindly, and that's when his hand landed on it. The foreclosure notice. Bold letters at the top. Final notice of default. Kevin's name, this address, amount due, $847,000. Foreclosure date, December 18th. I watched Marcus's eyes scan the document, watched his expression change from polite helpfulness to confusion, then to something else. Understanding. Realization. "Kevin," Marcus said slowly, standing up with the paper still in his hand. "Is this yours?" The room didn't go silent. The party was too big for that. But our little corner of it went very, very quiet. Kevin's face drained of color. He reached for the paper, but Marcus pulled it back slightly, still reading it. "I thought you said your house was paid off." Kevin's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. That's old. That's been resolved. I don't know how that got there." But Marcus was already stepping back, folding the paper carefully and tucking it into his jacket pocket. "I think I have everything I need," he said, his voice professional but cold. "Good luck with everything, Kevin." And just like that, he walked away. Not to the door, that would have been too obvious, but to the other side of the room, suddenly very interested in talking to anyone who wasn't my brother. Kevin stood there frozen, and then his eyes landed on me, still kneeling on the floor, gathering papers. For just a second, maybe half a second, I let my mask slip. I looked up at him and I smiled. Not a big smile, just a tiny curve of my lips, there and gone so fast he might have imagined it. But he didn't imagine the way I carefully stacked the rest of his papers and handed them to him, saying in my sweetest, most helpful voice, "Here you go, Kevin. I think I got everything." His hand trembled when he took them. And as I walked away, carrying my empty tray back to the kitchen, I heard Tiffany's voice, sharp and panicked, hissing at him. "What the hell just happened? Did we just lose Chen?" I didn't need to hear Kevin's answer. I could feel the desperation radiating off him like heat. The party continued, but the energy had shifted. Kevin's big night was falling apart, and the best part, he had no idea I was the earthquake. Not yet. The day after the party, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Tiffany. I didn't call back. Let her stew. Let her wonder if I was upset about something, if I'd heard Kevin's lies about my supposed addiction. The truth was, I was busy. I had a meeting with my attorney at 9 a.m., and we had a lot to discuss. When I walked into his office, the real one, not the shabby apartment where a poor Sophia lived, he had documents spread across his conference table like a war map. "Seraphim Capital has received Kevin's application for investment," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "He's asking for $2 million, says he'll give up 30% equity." I opened the folder and read Kevin's pitch deck. It was beautifully designed, full of graphs and projections and buzzwords, and almost every number in it was a lie. "He's inflated his revenue by 40%, my attorney continued, pointing to a spreadsheet. "His customer retention rate is actually 32%, not 89 like he claims here. And his expenses?" He laughed, shaking his head. "He's not even including the mortgage payments on his house, which he's been paying out of his business account." I sat back in my chair, processing this. Kevin wasn't just desperate. He was committing fraud. If Seraphim Capital were a real investment firm, they'd laugh him out of the building. But Seraphim wasn't real. It was me, which meant I could do whatever I wanted. "Set up the meeting," I said. "Make it look promising. Send him an email today saying we're very interested and want to meet next week to discuss terms." While my attorney drafted that email, I made another call. To my mother. I know, after everything. Why would I give her another chance? But I had to be sure. I had to know if there was even a shred of humanity left in her, one last opportunity for her to prove that blood meant something. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up. "What?" Not hello, not hi, sweetie, just what, like I was a telemarketer interrupting her day. "Mom, it's Sophia," I said, making my voice small and shaky. I haven't eaten in 2 days. I know Thanksgiving didn't go well, but I thought maybe I could come over, just for dinner. Maybe there are leftovers, or..." She cut me off. "Sophia, we're busy. Kevin just got a meeting with a major investor. His company is about to blow up. We're celebrating. We don't have time for your drama right now." "Mom, please, I'm really struggling. I just need..." "No." Her voice went hard. That tone she used to use when I was a kid and I'd disappointed her. "You need to figure out your own life. Stop dragging us down with your problems. Kevin worked hard to get where he is, and I won't let you suck the energy out of this family." There was a pause, and then she said something that sealed her fate. "Honestly, Sophia, if you'd just applied yourself, worked harder, maybe you wouldn't be in this situation. But you didn't. So don't come crying to us now." The line went dead. She'd hung up on me. Her own daughter, starving, or so she thought. And she'd hung up because my poverty was inconvenient to Kevin's success story. I sat there holding the phone, and I didn't feel sad. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt clear, like someone had wiped fog off a mirror and I could finally see everything perfectly. I'd given them every chance. The $200 test, the party where I humiliated myself serving them, this phone call, 3 opportunities to show basic human decency, and they'd failed every single one. I opened my laptop and pulled up the control panel for Nemesis Holdings, my empire, my weapon. With a few clicks, I could destroy everything they had. And you know what? I didn't hesitate, not even for a second. Execute everything, I told my attorney when he came back into the room. Accelerate the foreclosure timeline on Kevin's house. I want them out in 30 days, not 60. Call in the business debts, all of them, and send Kevin the meeting invitation from Seraphim Capital. Make it look incredible, like we're about to hand him a blank check. My attorney grinned. You're really going to make him think he's saved before you pull the rug out? I nodded. I'm going to let him taste victory. Let him celebrate. Let him think he's finally made it, that he's beaten the odds. And then I'm going to show him what happens when you confuse cruelty with strength. Because that's what they'd done, wasn't it? They'd mistaken their ability to hurt me for actual power. But real power isn't making someone feel small. Real power is building an empire in secret and dismantling someone's entire life before they even know you're coming. The email went out that afternoon. Kevin probably screamed when he saw it. Dear Mr. Martinez, Seraphim Capital has reviewed your application, and we are extremely impressed with KevTech Solutions' growth trajectory and market positioning. We would like to schedule a meeting to discuss a potential investment of $2 million at favorable terms. Please confirm your availability for December 15th at 2 p.m. at our offices. We look forward to partnering with you. Favorable terms. I almost laughed typing that. The only terms Kevin was going to get were surrender terms. And December 15th? That was the same day his foreclosure notice would be delivered by courier. His house and his business, both imploding on the same day. I wanted him to walk into that meeting thinking he was about to be saved, not knowing he was about to be buried. December 15th arrived like Christmas morning, except I was the only one who knew what gifts were being unwrapped. I woke up at 5 a.m., too excited to sleep, and I went for a run through the city while it was still dark. My breath made clouds in the cold air, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Today was the day. Today, Kevin and Tiffany would walk into Seraphim Capital's offices thinking they were about to become millionaires, and instead they'd find out they'd lost everything. I ran faster, my feet pounding the pavement, and I swear I could feel destiny racing beside me. By the time I got home and showered, my attorney had already texted, "Foreclosure notice delivered to Kevin's house at 8:47 a.m. Courier confirmed receipt by Tiffany Martinez." I imagined Tiffany opening that envelope, her manicured nails tearing the paper, her eyes scanning the legal language. Did she understand it immediately? Or did she have to read it twice, 3 times, before the reality sank in? Either way, by now Kevin knew. He knew that his house, his precious showcase, his symbol of success, was being taken from him in 30 days. But here's the beautiful part. My attorney had timed everything perfectly. That meeting at Seraphim Capital was still happening in 6 hours, which meant Kevin had a choice: fall apart or put on his best suit and go beg for the money that might save him. And Kevin? Kevin was a survivor, a liar and a coward, but a survivor. I knew he'd show up. Desperate people always show up. I got dressed slowly, deliberately, like a warrior putting on armor. I'd bought a suit for this. Tom Ford, $12,000, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes. I paired it with Louboutin heels that cost more than Kevin's car payment, and a Cartier watch that probably cost more than his entire month of expenses. My hair was styled perfectly, makeup flawless but understated. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see poor Sophia anymore. I saw a CEO, a queen, someone who'd clawed her way from nothing to everything, and who was about to remind her family what power actually looked like. I took one last look at myself, and I whispered, "Showtime." The Seraphim Capital offices were on the 42nd floor of the nicest building downtown, the kind of place where the lobby has a waterfall and the elevators have their own elevator attendant. I'd leased the entire floor under my LLC, furnished it with the kind of art and furniture that screamed old money, and hired a receptionist who looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine. When I arrived at 1 p.m., an hour before Kevin's appointment, everything was perfect. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table that could seat 20 hours, and my chair, the CEO's chair, positioned so that whoever sat across from me would have the sun in their eyes. Power games. I'd learned them all. At 1:45 p.m., my receptionist called, "Mrs. Martinez, your 2 o'clock appointment is here, 15 minutes early." Of course they were early. Desperate people are always early. "Put them in the glass waiting room," I said. "Let them sit for a while." The glass waiting room was my favorite touch. A beautiful space with walls that were half frosted, half clear glass. You could see out into the main office area, watch people working, feel like you were on display. It was designed to make visitors feel small, unimportant, like they were auditioning for something. I waited another 10 minutes, checking my phone, reviewing my notes, letting them marinate in their own anxiety. Then I took the elevator down to the lobby, walked through the front doors like I'd just arrived from another meeting. And that's when I saw them through the glass. Kevin in his best suit, the one he thought made him look successful. Tiffany in a designer knockoff dress, checking her makeup in a compact mirror. And, oh, this was perfect, my mother Joyce, sitting between them like some kind of moral support. They'd brought her along, probably hoping that a family meeting vibe would make them more appealing to investors. I walked past the glass waiting room, my heels clicking on the marble floor, carrying a leather portfolio that contained nothing but blank paper. Tiffany saw me first. Her eyes went wide. Then she started laughing. Actually laughing. She nudged Kevin, pointed at me through the glass, and I could read her lips. "Oh my God, look. Sophia must have gotten a job cleaning this building. How pathetic." Kevin looked up, saw me, and smiled this condescending smile. He said something to my mother, who turned and looked at me with pure disgust. Then Tiffany did something that made my blood sing. She knocked on the glass. Actually knocked on it, like I was an animal in a zoo. And when I looked over, she waved mockingly and mouthed, "Good luck with your mop." They all laughed. Even my mother laughed, shaking her head like I was the saddest thing she'd ever seen. And I just smiled. I gave them a little wave back, the kind you'd give to children who don't know any better. Then I walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the 42nd floor, and as the doors closed, I watched their reflections in the polished steel, still laughing, still clueless, still thinking they were better than me. They had no idea that in 15 minutes, they'd be sitting across from me, begging, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. At exactly 2 p.m., my receptionist escorted them into the conference room. I was already there, sitting in my CEO chair, facing the windows so they could only see my silhouette against the bright afternoon sun. I heard them enter, heard the nervous shuffle of expensive shoes on hardwood, heard Kevin's forced, confident breathing. My receptionist said, "Please have a seat. Miss Martinez will be with you shortly." And I almost lost it right there. Miss Martinez. They still had no idea. I let 30 seconds of silence pass, just enough to make them uncomfortable. And then I spoke without turning around. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Martinez. I've reviewed your proposal for KevTech Solutions. It's interesting." Kevin started his rehearsed pitch, his voice shaking slightly. "Thank you for this opportunity. We're positioned for explosive growth, and with the right strategic partner, we believe..." That's when I slowly spun my chair around to face them. "We believe you've been lying about everything." The reaction was instantaneous and beautiful. Kevin's mouth fell open mid-sentence. Tiffany made this choking sound like someone had wrapped hands around her throat. My mother Joyce just stared, her brain clearly short-circuiting, trying to process why her failure daughter was sitting in the CEO's chair wearing a suit that cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. "Sophia?" Kevin finally whispered. "What? Where's the CEO? What are you doing?" "I am the CEO," I said, and I let each word land like a hammer. "Seraphim Capital is mine. Nemesis Holdings is mine. And as of 3 weeks ago, your mortgage is mine too." I slid a thick folder across the polished table. "Go ahead, open it." "I'll wait." Kevin's hands trembled as he opened it, and I watched the color drain from his face as he flipped through page after page. Lottery claim forms, LLC documents, the purchase agreement for his house, his business loans with my name as the new creditor, the foreclosure notice delivered this morning. Every single piece of paper that proved I owned his entire life. Tiffany grabbed the folder from Kevin, her eyes scanning frantically, and then she looked up at me with pure panic. "This can't be legal. You can't just—" "I can, and I did," I interrupted. "Everything was done through proper legal channels. Ask your lawyer." "Oh wait, you can't afford one anymore, can you?" My mother finally found her voice, and it came out sharp and indignant. "Sophia, I don't know what kind of scam you're running, but you're a house cleaner. You don't have this kind of money." I pulled out my phone and played the video. The hidden camera footage from Thanksgiving dinner filled the screen on the wall behind me. Kevin's voice echoed through the conference room. "I have money to invest, Sophia, not to throw in the trash." Then Tiffany's cruel laugh. Then Joyce's final blow. "Get out of my table. You're embarrassing this family." I let it play for 30 seconds before stopping it. "That was your test," I said quietly. $200. That's all I asked for. If you'd given it to me that night, I would have invested $20 million in Kevin's company today. But you didn't. You humiliated me instead. Kevin tried to stand up, his chair scraping back, desperation flooding his face. "Sophia, please. We made a mistake. We were wrong." "But you can't just destroy us over $200. "I'm not destroying you over $200, I said, my voice like ice. "I'm destroying you because of who you showed me you really are. The money was just the test. You failed because you're cruel. Because when someone you're supposed to love needed help, you kicked them while they were down." I stood up, walked to the windows, and looked out at the city below. All those people living their lives, having no idea that up here, an entire family was learning what karma felt like. "Do you know what you told Marcus Chen at your party?" I turned back to face them. "You told him I had addiction issues, that you'd been supporting me for years out of charity. You used me, your own sister, as a prop to make yourself look generous while I was serving drinks for $50. Joyce stood up, her face red with anger now instead of shock. "I'm your mother. You owe me respect. You owe me—" "I don't owe you anything," I said, and my voice didn't rise, didn't waver. "You had 3 chances: Thanksgiving dinner, the phone call when I said I was starving, and right now, in this room, 3 chances to show me that blood meant something, that family was more than just a word you use when it's convenient. And you failed every single time." I sat back down in my chair, folded my hands on the table, and delivered the verdict. The foreclosure is final. You have 30 days to vacate Kevin's house. The business loans are being called, all of them, due immediately. And this investment you came here begging for, denied. Seraphim Capital doesn't invest in liars and frauds. The room went silent except for Tiffany's quiet sobbing. Kevin looked like a man who'd just watched his entire world burn down. And my mother, she was staring at me like I was a monster. Maybe I was, but they'd created me. Security was already at the door. I'd signaled them with a button under the table. "These gentlemen will escort you out," I said, standing up and smoothing my suit. "Oh, and one more thing." I walked to the door, then turned back to look at them one last time. "You should have given me the $200. And then I walked out, leaving them sitting in that conference room with their shattered dreams and their unpayable debts, and I didn't look back, not even once, because the people who deserve your mercy are the ones who showed you mercy first. And my family, they'd shown me exactly who they were. Now I'd shown them who I'd become. They didn't leave. Not right away." I heard the commotion from my office down the hall, raised voices, Tiffany screaming something about lawsuits, Kevin pleading with my receptionist to let him see me again. I sat at my desk, hands steady, and I let them rage. Let them feel what powerlessness tastes like. After 10 minutes, security called me. "Ms. Martinez, they're refusing to leave. Should we involve the police?" I thought about it for a moment, imagined squad cars pulling up, Kevin being escorted out in handcuffs for trespassing. It would be poetic, but no, I had something better planned. "Give them 5 more minutes," I said. "Then bring them back to the conference room. Tell them I've reconsidered." I could practically hear the hope surge through the phone line when my receptionist delivered that message. Oh, they'd think I'd had a change of heart. They'd think family finally meant something. They had no idea. When I walked back into that conference room, they looked like drowning people who'd just spotted a life raft. Kevin's eyes were red. Had he been crying? Tiffany's makeup was destroyed, black streaks down her cheeks. Joyce sat perfectly still, her hands clasped in her lap like she was praying. "Sophia," Kevin started, his voice breaking. "Thank God." "Listen, we need to talk about this. We're family. We can work this out." I held up one hand and he stopped talking immediately. That's when I knew I'd won. Kevin, who'd spent our entire childhood bossing me around, telling me what to do, making me feel small, he'd just obeyed me with a single gesture. "I want to show you something," I said, connecting my laptop to the projector again. The screen behind me lit up with a video. Not the Thanksgiving footage this time. Something different. It was Kevin's investor party, but from a different angle. The camera showed Marcus Chen talking to Kevin by the fireplace, showed me serving drinks in the background, showed the exact moment that foreclosure notice accidentally fell near Marcus's feet. But this version had audio. Crystal clear audio. Kevin's voice, my sister, the one serving drinks. I've been supporting her for years. Addiction issues. I paused the video and turned to face them. "You told a potential investor, a man who could have saved your company, that I was a drug addict. You used my fake poverty, my humiliation, as a marketing tool to make yourself look charitable." Kevin opened his mouth, but I kept going. "And here's the beautiful part. While you were telling him that lie, I was worth $90 million. While you were pitching him on your solid fundamentals, you were 3 months behind on your mortgage. Everything about that night was a lie. Everything about your life is a lie." I pulled up another document on the screen, a detailed breakdown of Kevin's finances that my investigators had compiled, every maxed out credit card, every late payment, every time he'd borrowed money from one account to pay another, robbing Peter to pay Paul. "You asked for $2 million today," I said, pointing to the numbers. "But even if I'd given it to you, you'd have burned through it in 6 months. Because your business model is fundamentally broken, Kevin. You're not an entrepreneur. You're a con artist who got really good at looking successful." Tiffany tried to interrupt. "That's not fair. His company has real clients, real revenue." "Revenue that doesn't cover expenses," I shot back. "He's been paying himself a 6-figure salary while his employees' paychecks bounce. He's been buying luxury cars on credit while owing suppliers hundreds of thousands. And you..." I turned my gaze to Tiffany. "You've been spending money on designer clothes and country club memberships while your house was being foreclosed on." Joyce finally spoke, and her voice had shifted from angry to desperate. "Sophia, please, I know we made mistakes. I know we weren't there for you when you needed us. But this is too much. You're going to make us homeless. You're going to destroy your brother's livelihood. Is that really what you want?" I walked around the table slowly, deliberately, until I was standing right behind my mother's chair. I leaned down, close to her ear, and I whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. "You made me homeless 3 weeks ago when you told me to get out of your table. You destroyed my spirit when you said I was an embarrassment. The only difference is, I had nowhere to turn. You have each other. You can figure it out together." I straightened up and walked back to my position at the head of the table. Here's what's really happening here. This isn't about $200. This is about due diligence, a term I'm sure Kevin knows from his business. Before you invest in something, you test it. You see if it's real, if it's solid, if it can handle pressure. I tested you, I continued, my voice steady and cold. I gave you multiple chances to show me that family meant something, that love was real, that when someone falls, you help them up. You don't kick them harder. And you failed. Every single time. I pulled up one final document on the screen, the bank statement from Thanksgiving night, timestamped 9:47 p.m., showing $450,000 in my account. This is what I had the night you threw me out. This is what I was sitting on when I asked you for $200. If you'd given it to me, if you'd shown even a shred of compassion, I would have revealed this today and invested $20 million in Kevin's company. I would have paid off this house. I would have set up trust funds. But instead, you laughed at me. You mocked me. You told an investor I was an addict. You told me I was starving and hung up the phone. The room was dead silent now, except for Tiffany's quiet sobbing. So here's my final offer, and it's non-negotiable. You take what you can carry from that house in 30 days and you leave. The business closes, the debts are called, and you never, ever contact me again. Because the people who deserve second chances are the ones who gave first chances, and you gave me nothing but cruelty. Kevin broke first. Not with anger. That would have been easier to watch, but with complete, total collapse. He put his face in his hands and his shoulders started shaking. These horrible choking sobs that sounded like something dying. Please, he gasped between breaths. Sophia, please. I have employees. People who depend on me. Their families. Did you think about their families when you bounced their paychecks? I asked quietly. Did you think about them when you spent company money on that watch you're wearing? He looked down at his wrist like he'd forgotten it was there. That Rolex that cost $18,000 while his employees were struggling to pay rent. You want me to have mercy on you because other people will suffer. You should have thought about that before you built a house of cards and called it an empire. Tiffany stood up so fast her chair fell backward. You know what? Fine. Fine. Take the house. Take everything. But don't act like you're some saint here, Sophia. You're just as bad as us. Worse, even. You set us up. You manipulated us. You played games instead of just telling us the truth. Her voice was getting higher, more hysterical. If you'd just told us you won the lottery, we would have been happy for you. We would have celebrated with you. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, and then I laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just genuine amusement at the absurdity. Really? You would have been happy for me, the woman you called lazy and pathetic? The woman you paid $50 to serve drinks at your party? You would have suddenly loved me because I had money. I shook my head. No, Tiffany. You would have swarmed me like vultures. You would have asked for loans and investments and handouts. And when I said no, you would have called me selfish and greedy. I know exactly what you would have done because I've watched you do it to other people. My mother hadn't said anything for several minutes, but now she stood up, and when she spoke, her voice was different, smaller, older. I gave birth to you, she said, and I could hear tears in her throat. I raised you. I sacrificed for you. And this is how you repay me. By humiliating me. By destroying your brother. She pressed her hand to her chest like she was having trouble breathing. I'm your mother, Sophia. That has to mean something. Blood has to mean something. I felt something twist in my chest. Not guilt, exactly, but something close to it. For just a second, I saw her as she used to be, younger, tired, working 2 jobs to keep us fed after Dad left. But then I remembered Thanksgiving. I remembered her face when she told me to get out. I remembered the phone call when I said I was starving and she told me not to suck the energy from Kevin's success. You're right, I said softly. You did give birth to me. You did raise me. And for 18 years, you did your best with what you had, and I'm grateful for that. I really am. I paused, choosing my words carefully. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being my mother and started being Kevin's publicist. You stopped seeing me as your daughter and started seeing me as the failure that made him look better by comparison. Every family dinner, every phone call, every conversation, it was always about how amazing Kevin was, how successful, how proud you were. And me, I was the cautionary tale, the example of what happens when you don't work hard enough. Joyce opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. And when I called you 3 days ago and said I was starving, you told me you were too busy celebrating Kevin's future success. Your daughter was hungry, and you chose a party over feeding her. So no, Mom, blood doesn't mean anything if you only value it when it's convenient. Security appeared at the door again. I'd pressed the silent button under the table. But before they could enter, Kevin stood up one last time. His face was blotchy and red, destroyed, but there was something desperate and calculating in his eyes. What if we apologize? He said quickly. Really apologize. What if we make it right? We'll go to therapy. We'll work on ourselves. We'll prove to you that we can change. Kevin, I interrupted, and my voice was almost gentle. You're not apologizing because you're sorry. You're apologizing because you got caught. You're apologizing because I have power now and you want some of it. If I'd stayed poor, If I'd never won that lottery, you'd still be telling investors I was an addict. You'd still be laughing at me with Tiffany. You'd still be using me as a punchline. I walked to the door and gestured to security. These gentlemen will escort you to your car. You're not allowed back in this building. Any further communication goes through my attorneys. They stood up slowly, like people walking to their own execution. Kevin tried one more time. Sophia, we're family. No, I said, and this time my voice was final. We're related. There's a difference. I watched security escort them out, watched Kevin's shoulders slump, watched Tiffany clutch her designer purse like it was a life preserver, watched my mother walk with her head down, suddenly looking every one of her 63 years. And as they disappeared around the corner toward the elevators, I felt nothing. No triumph, no sadness, just a clean, empty feeling, like I'd finally put down a weight I'd been carrying my entire life. I walked to the window and looked out at the city, at the gridlock traffic 42 floors below, at all those tiny people living their tiny lives. Somewhere down there, Kevin's car was probably being repossessed right now. Somewhere, the foreclosure notice was sitting on their kitchen counter, counting down the days until they had to leave. And somewhere, my mother was realizing that the daughter she'd dismissed had become more powerful than she'd ever imagined. The game was over, and I'd won. 6 months later, I'm sitting in a different office, not the Seraphim Capital one, which I closed after it served its purpose. This one's smaller, warmer, filled with photos of kids I've never met, but whose lives I've changed. I'm signing a check for $2 million to the Children's Hope Foundation, an organization that helps kids aging out of foster care, kids who have nothing, kids who need someone to believe in them. The director is crying, thanking me over and over, and I just smile and tell her, everyone deserves a chance, especially the people who've been told they don't matter. I don't tell her about Kevin and Tiffany, now living in a 2-bedroom apartment across town, both working retail jobs to make ends meet. I don't tell her about my mother, who tried to reach out twice through mutual friends before finally accepting that I meant what I said. I don't tell her that revenge didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would, but justice felt right. Later that night, I'm home in my actual house now. Not the shabby apartment, not the corporate office, just a comfortable place where I can finally breathe. And I'm going through my mail. There's a letter with no return address. I almost throw it away, but something makes me open it. It's from Kevin. Just 3 sentences in his handwriting. You were right. We failed the test. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see who I really was. I stare at those words for a long time. Part of me wants to feel vindicated, triumphant. But mostly I just feel tired. I don't write back. Some apologies come too late, after too much damage. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. I fold the letter, put it in a drawer, and close it. Maybe one day I'll respond. Maybe I won't. But that's the beautiful thing about having power. You get to choose who deserves your time. My family lost a fortune over $200. Actually, they lost it over something much simpler. They lost it because when given the choice between kindness and cruelty, they chose cruelty. Because they thought money was the same as worth, and poverty was the same as failure. They learned the hard way that the universe has a funny way of testing you, and the biggest tests often come disguised as the smallest requests. $200. That's all it would have cost them to keep their empire. Instead, it cost them everything. And you know what? I'd do it all over again, because some lessons are worth $90 million to teach. But my story, it's nothing compared to what happened to the woman in our next video. See, my family's betrayal was about money and pride. Painful, yes, but at least it made sense in its own twisted way. But imagine getting a phone call at 2 a.m. from a number you don't recognize. You answer it, annoyed, ready to hang up on some telemarketer. And then you hear a voice, a child's voice, saying your name, saying a phrase that only 2 people in the entire world knew. You and your little brother. Your little brother who you watched them lower into the ground 42 years ago. Your little brother whose funeral you can still remember. The tiny white coffin. Your mother's screams. The smell of lilies making you sick. The voice on the phone says, I need you to come get me. Please, I've been waiting so long. You tell yourself it's a prank, a sick joke, someone who found old family records and wants to torture you. But then he says something else, something about the treehouse you built together, the secret password you made up, the stuffed rabbit you buried with him, things nobody could know, things you never told anyone. So you go to his grave. You stand there at dawn with a shovel, hands shaking, and you dig. And when you finally reach the coffin and pry it open, you find something that makes your blood turn to ice. It's not empty, but it's not bones either. What's inside that coffin has been waiting 42 years to be found. And when you finally understand what really happened, when you realize who's been lying to you your entire life and why, you'll wish the grave had stayed closed. Some family secrets are buried for a reason. Click to find out what was really in that tiny white coffin and who's been calling from beyond it.